Welcome to today's Daily Insider, the final day of March. Kevin Rogers and Thom Cunningham with you as we take a look at the Final Four. Last four teams are left. Gonzaga, UCLA, Baylor, and Houston. And they'll play this weekend for the right to play Monday night. And then the bubble will be over. The college basketball season will be over. And move on to baseball because baseball starts tomorrow. We'll actually look at the games for tomorrow in just a little bit, and also NBA. Only 4 games last night. We'll review those games, including the Magic coming back to beat the Clippers as 11-point dogs. And we'll look ahead to tonight's NBA, so we got a lot to get to. So let's get right to it. And Tom, let's begin with last night in college basketball with the 2 games. And obviously, USC was a team that maybe could have pulled off the upset against against Gonzaga, but that just wasn't the case. And Gonzaga ends up blowing out USC last night, and Gonzaga advances to the Final Four for the second time in school history.
Yeah, it's the first time Andy Enfield's team has not covered the spread in March Madness. The Trojans just got off to a really slow start in that game. Went 0-2 in the ATS, but went 2-0 in the point total market in last night's game. So depending on which markets you took my advice on, you either did really well or did not do well. So apologies if you took the ATS, but more power to you if you took the point total. I thought the most interesting thing of this game, however, was that Drew Timme dominated Mobley in the paint. I'm starting to wonder if Drew Timme is going to become a good NBA player now. He seems a little undersized. He might have to play a 3 or a 4 role in the NBA, but he has beaten every big man he has faced in this tournament, and he just beat the best one that I would argue in terms of NBA talent in Mobley. One thing I also did not expect from USC were the amount of turnovers they had to start the game. They looked like they were scared right from the beginning. And I think one thing that we've harped on is Gonzaga's offense. One thing we've mentioned is how good Gonzaga's defense is, but we have never harped on Gonzaga's defense, how good they actually are. We've mentioned a few times they are top 15 nationally in defensive efficiency. I know Mark Few last night during the halftime or postgame interview said his defense is top 10 in the nation. That's not true, but he's very close. It's top 15. So Gonzaga's defense, very, very good. I'm not sure who's going to beat them, but like we've been saying, Kevin, for about a year and a half, it seems like Baylor and Gonzaga have just been on a collision course to meet each other, and it does seem like it's going to happen. Overall impressed with Gonzaga, very disappointed with the way USC performed, but they seemed much better in the second half. If they had a mirroring performance in the first half of that game like they did the second half, they may have covered, but I'm not even willing to make that bet at this point. Gonzaga, very impressive. They covered the spread, and the point total went under, so went 1 for 2 in that.
And now Andy Enfield, he has his first ATS loss in the tournament. Again, 10-0 against the spread to begin, so it's not terrible. Yeah, and look, USC, very good team. You can't take anything away from them. But at the same time, Gonzaga is excellent, and they haven't lost a game yet this year, so no shame in that. So USC's prime rival, they are going to go to the Final Four, so that one stinks. So you end up getting blown out. Then you see your rival, who you beat twice this year, beat the number 1 seed in the East region, and UCLA knocks off Michigan in just an ugly game. Yeah. Early on, nobody could score. It seemed like Michigan was going to, take control maybe, but they just let UCLA hang around. And you've seen it, that against Alabama and against Michigan State, that UCLA is good enough to beat these teams. And the 11 seed, obviously, very, it just seemed very off as a seeding for UCLA. We know they're better than 11. We've said that the whole time. Are they going to beat Gonzaga? I don't know about that. They're getting a ton of points. They're getting, 2 touchdowns against Gonzaga. But still, UCLA, that was a really good win to beat Michigan, who, they played probably their best game of the season against Florida State, or one of their best games. Now, that was just hard to capitalize off of it.
Yeah, Johnny Juzang is a beast. He has gone off multiple times this season. He hasn't played every game because he's been hurt. He actually rolled his ankle against Michigan. The free throws are really becoming a story in this tournament. Hunter Dickinson missed a lot of free throws. Ended up being, a 2-point game or something like that. They could have ended up winning that game. It's just interesting to me when you look at Alabama and how poorly they shot free throws, and then you see how poorly Michigan shot free throws against UCLA. It makes you wonder what's up with that region. The top seeds in that part of the bracket are not converting free throws, and it's killing them. And UCLA is taking advantage. They're good enough to take advantage of mistakes like that. The one play in particular I thought was interesting was when Mick Cronin called a timeout and they drew up a play to see Yami Jaquez wide open for three, and he missed it. And UCLA ended up winning the game. But it was interesting to me because Johnny Juzang has had such a hot hand why he would not be taking the last shot of the game. But again, this just shows you Mick Cronin's conviction in the depth and the talent that this UCLA team does possess with Tiger Campbell, Yami Jaquez, Johnny Juzang, and even Cody Riley. He only had 4 points, but they were crucial buckets in the second half of a game when he had 3 to 4 fouls as well. So it just seems like UCLA is really doing a good job of living in the moment and playing really well. I don't think it's going to be enough, though, to take out Gonzaga, who basically looks like they could beat most G League teams at this point.
Yeah, Gonzaga's been extremely, they're unstoppable, at this point. And you look at the teams they're playing, it's one thing in the first round to beat Texas Southern, but then after that, when you're beating USC, you're beating Oklahoma, you're beating Creighton, you're beating them convincingly, right. And USC was one of the top teams in the Pac-12. So now we get set for the Final Four coming up on Saturday, and Gonzaga, they're favored. They should be favored by 14 points, but also, you look at the UCLA Bruins and you say, can they do it again? Can they go one more time and pull off another upset, or at least a cover? And they've covered all these games now, but now you're trying to do it against a powerhouse. It's 30-0.
Yeah, Gonzaga, they've covered 5 of 6 games. UCLA, though, they do a good job covering when they're the underdog. They've covered the spread in 6 of 9 as the underdog. They've also covered the spread in 7 of 10 overall. To me, though, all that is blah, 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 because Gonzaga is that good. We went through all these trends with USC. It didn't happen. And I really do truly feel that Gonzaga's defense is as good as their offense. There's just a lot of conviction on that side of the court. There's a lot of experience on this team. We could sit here for an hour and talk about all the great things that Gonzaga does well. I think the point total is very interesting with this game, though, at 145.5, because what you're looking at is Gonzaga, who's 15-15 on the OU this season, so they're split, and that's mainly because odds makers are putting their point total in the high 150s, sometimes 160, but usually around 155.5 is where Gonzaga's point total average is for most of their games. In this game against UCLA, it's 145, and I think odds makers are playing a little bit too respectful to UCLA's defense. Keep in mind, UCLA has gone over more times than not. They're 17-14 on the OU. And so, although Gonzaga has gone under in 4 of 6 games, it does seem that this point total that odds makers are given for the 145.5, that should go over. I would be shocked if Gonzaga doesn't touch 80, and I would be shocked if UCLA didn't touch 60. You just go with a few buckets from there. If Gonzaga happens to get 83, 84 points in the game, UCLA should score enough to see that point total go over. So I actually think the point total going over is the better bet rather than the 14-point spread, which I could see a push. An 80 to 66 final is very doable in this game. So a push is possible, but push comes to shove, Gonzaga should cover the spread. But again, I like the point total going over as the best bet.
Did anything change in your mind with or any opinion made in the Houston-Baylor game coming up? The first game on Saturday, Baylor's laying 5, and Houston, as we mentioned yesterday, a team that has beaten all double-digit seeds so far. Yeah. And again, that's not your fault when that's who you face, but fact of the matter is you faced a bunch of double-digit seeds. Now you face possibly the second-best team in the country, and you're a dog, which you should be, but Baylor, the last few rounds, they're looking like the Baylor team that we expected to be competing for a national championship.
Yeah, and they're winning tough, close games, and that's key. I think the further you go into this tournament, it's not a bad thing that you're tested every round in this tournament as long as you're surviving and advancing. Baylor, I think, should cover this game. with a 4-point spread. I see it's gone to 5 now. That's a little bit concerning. The opening was 4. The point total at 135. I think going over is the way to go in this game. You look at the OU Baylor. They have gone over in 7 of their last 9 games. Baylor is 17-11 on the OU. The spread is tricky, Kevin, because it opened at 4. We're now at 5, and Houston. We talked about this before we came on. They have yet to have a back-to-back failure in covering the spread. They failed to cover against Oregon State. Houston has covered the spread in 9 straight games after failing to cover the spread the game prior. So with that trend, Houston would cover. They've covered 21 games out of 31 this season. It just seems like there's a lot of questions in the point spread market entering this game. So I'm going to go with the over and take advantage of the low 135 that odds makers have given for the point total.
So we have the Final Four coming up on Saturday, and then you have baseball coming up tomorrow. So we have an off day here with baseball. Now we go to April 1st, no April Fools, and baseball is starting up, thankfully. And I know that, some people, they may look at it and say, oh, it's such a long season. I love this. I really do.
It's the greatest marathon in sports.
Yeah, I love this. So let's look at let's first look at any win totals you're interested in before we get to tomorrow's tomorrow's slate. Let's first look at the win totals. These are updated now. What are you gonna go over on the Dodgers?
I just think that's funny that they have 102.5. I've actually seen that number at 104.5. The thing with the Dodgers is, they can win 100 games. I'm going to shake the hand of the person who takes the over and hits on that, mainly because you look 2 spots down and you have the Padres in their division. So I just think there's going to be a lot more competition at the top of the division in the NL West. I don't think Arizona, Colorado, or San Francisco is as bad as advertised going into this season. And also keep in mind, San Francisco, Arizona, and Colorado are all very difficult venues for any road team to go in, whether they're in or out of the division, in or out of the league. I really think that the 102.5 is a bit high. I'm not going to argue if you want to take the over for that, but just be mindful that the NL West is a bit more competitive than possibly advertised, and the San Diego Padres are really good. So that one worries me a little bit. The White Sox at 90.5. I understand that everyone loves the White Sox on paper. They should be good. They've got potential, but they have to do it. And they had a good season last year, but last year, does that even really count with half the games? I don't know. We'll have to see if the White Sox can handle the longevity of a full MLB season and be successful in it by winning over 90 games. So I'd be woeful of the Dodgers and the White Sox. I don't want to say don't bet the over on that. Just be mindful with those 2 teams because it might be a little bit more difficult to get to that number than possibly advertised. So,
in the let's look at some of these numbers at the top. Now, obviously, the Dodgers are very high at 102.5, and they get Trevor Bauer, and they're stacked. And again, they have past San Diego, Arizona, San Francisco, and Colorado. We believe are going to be non-factors. I think the Giants may be a little better than we think. Maybe try to compete for a wild card, but obviously they're not the same class as the other 2. They had a good season last year. Right. Colorado's rebuilding. Nolan Arenado went to the Cardinals, and the Diamondbacks are can hover around 500.
Well at home, those teams.
Yes. Now, the others, when you look in the American League East, and Tampa Bay had, they lose Blake Snell to San Diego after they go to the World Series. Toronto's in that mix at 86.5. They get George Springer. They have a lot of good offensive firepower. It's just about the starting pitching. You have Ryu as your top guy from the Dodgers who came there last year, and he pitched well. But, again, in this division where the Orioles won't be good, but the Red Sox should be improved. You would think Alex Cora is now back, and he sat out the 1 year because of the cheating, and let's come on back. Okay, yeah, no, you're right about that. A half year, it wasn't even a whole year; it was a half year. So, it's still a competitive division, but the NL East, though, Tom.
Yeah.
Good. Braves at 91.5, Mets at 90.5, Nationals at 84.5, the Phillies at 80.5. And the Marlins at 71.5. And the Marlins made a nice run last year. Again, shortened season. Here's one team I want your thoughts on is the Philadelphia Phillies. 80.5. Bryce Harper's third season now there. Joe Girardi, again the manager. We saw what he did with the Yankees, but with this Phillies team, they have the talent, but yet it seems like the pitching at times is shaky, and you have a very competitive division that Philadelphia's got to get over 500 one of these years.
Yeah, it's maybe Zach Wheeler will help that rotation. I don't really know how much he will help them, but with the Phillies, it has been inconsistent starting pitching after Aaron Nola, and that does include the bullpen. So there's a lot of mound issues for Philadelphia. I love the lineup, though. I mean, anytime you can get Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins hitting, right after one another, that's a threat. The Phillies, 80.5, I probably won't take. I mean, honestly, the Marlins win total at 71.5 for what they did last year. I might look into that, possibly going over. The Braves, to me, are still the team to beat in that division. The Mets have to get through a full season without injuries for me to actually buy into them. Because every year the Mets on paper should be a playoff team, but they aren't because of injuries, refusal to bring players up or call them down. I just think the conviction lies with the Braves. Washington is interesting because we know Juan Soto is actually co-favored for MVP in the NL with Mookie Betts, which is a little strange to me. But you have a pretty decent lineup there in Washington with, I would argue, one of the best 1, 2, 3 pitchers in all of baseball, let alone the National League. So in the NL East, I'm looking at the Braves and the Nationals before I look at the Mets or the Phillies. But I think the Marlins at 71.5 is a bit intriguing. They are under the radar. They went under the radar last year as well. They played very well in those games. The Miami pitching last year was very good. So if they can improve entering this season, I do think Miami clears that 71.5 total.
Now, teams at the bottom, though. Let's see. Who could you take a shot with at an over these bottom teams? I mean, another team that I would look at, again, I look at the Royals maybe, too. I mean, 74, you have Detroit. Cleveland's going to be, I don't want to say down, but, Cleveland's kind of a wild card because past Shane Bieber, I don't really know what else they have on that team with Lindor now in New York. So Cleveland can really be up and down. I know Chicago and Minnesota are going to be the teams to beat in that AL Central, and they also draw the NL Central, so you're going to play the Pirates a bunch. Milwaukee's up and down. Cincinnati is going to hover around maybe the 84, 85 win mark, and even the Cubs. Look at the Cubs. Yeah. They're at 78.5 wins. That this is a team that maybe they could be sellers at the trade deadline. So the Royals over 73.5 could be a look, but then some of these teams at the bottom, I don't know how much faith you would have in the Pirates because there's not a lot of talent there. Same thing with the Rockies. So Josh Bell is gone from the Pirates to Washington. Nolan Arenado is gone from the Rockies to St. Louis. Texas doesn't really have a lot. No. Detroit's interesting because A.J. Hinch is there now, and he's been, again, a good manager. And, yeah, stuff happened in Houston with the cheating, but it's still a proven guy. So anybody stick out there at the bottom for maybe an over win total, or you see someone that's just going to stay completely under?
Well, I mean, I do like the Marlins still. The Cubs is intriguing at 78.5 because that lineup is still very dominant with Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant. It just really comes down to the pitching for Chicago, especially that bullpen. In terms of bottom feeders, I don't know. Maybe Detroit over 68.5. is not a bad look. They showed some solid life last year in the lineup. But, when Matthew Boyd is your starting pitcher, I just don't have a ton of conviction right there. If I have to choose any of the teams between Detroit and Pittsburgh, I honestly might take a look at Baltimore to go over 64.5. Is Trey Mancini back for them? I'm not sure, but if he is, that's a huge bat in the lineup. They already have a decent lineup that can hit. They just need some pitching help. And there is potential in Baltimore's arms. They haven't come to full fruition, obviously, but there is potential with the names on that staff. But like you said, Pittsburgh lost their top hitter. Colorado lost someone who I think should have won an MVP award by now, especially for the defensive play Arenado has on the field. There's no conviction in Texas. I actually think they'll probably finish with the worst record in MLB. But yeah, of those 5 bottom teams, I'll take Detroit or Baltimore with absolutely no conviction in either of them. Give me the Marlins. That's my favorite right now.
And the bottom 2 in the American League West with Seattle and Texas, I mean, we know how good Oakland is. We know how good Houston is. And even the Angels should be better this year as long as Mike Trout is healthy. You still have Trout. Ohtani, Anthony Rendon. I mean, there's bats in that lineup, so that's still a tough division to think that Seattle or Texas. I mean, Texas past Joey Gallo. Like, I don't really know what else there is to rely on.
Not for nothing, but Joey Gallo is not someone who's going to come in and hit 300 for you. He is a home run or bust hitter. So you do need a little bit more consistency in that lineup to compete with the Oakland Athletics and the Houston Astros. Even though Houston did lose George Springer, who I thought was a huge top of the part of that order for Houston. I mean, how many power outfielders with the speed George Springer has can consistently hit in that 2 spot? Not many. So this is going to be a big season for Kyle Tucker of Houston, coming in to really take over the everyday role of George Springer. How he plays, Kyle Tucker, might dictate whether or not Houston can get over the win total that's been given to them.
Let's take a look at tomorrow's action in Major League Baseball. I know that we would normally reserve tomorrow for tomorrow's action, but we're too excited, so we're going to look at it today. So too bad if you were waiting for tomorrow. Now, let's look at, well, there's nothing today. That's why there's no games today. All right, so let's look at tomorrow. And you got a lot of big favorites. The Cubs, huge favorite against the Pirates. No shocker there. Yu Darvish making his Padres debut against Madison Bumgarner, who pitched well towards the end of last season. He's not the guy he was with the Giants. We know he's going towards the end. But San Diego, a lot of faith in them to compete with the Dodgers for the NL West title. Still the Dodgers to lose, obviously. But Yu Darvish laying 220 seems a bit rich, at least in my opinion. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on Arizona, but Madison Bumgarner is still a guy that can pitch well, but that's still a very, very much a lot to lay there for the Padres.
Well, the thing with Yu Darvish, really since he left Los Angeles and he's been with the Dodgers in Chicago, the one thing with Yu Darvish is the 5th inning. When he cruises really until the 5th inning, and then he kind of falls apart. And I'm wondering if it has anything to do with the way he pitches, because the way Yu Darvish pitches is power, and he's gonna pitch a lot, and he's gonna go for strikeouts. And I don't know, at his age if that has caught up to him, but Yu Darvish is not the same pitcher he was with the Rangers when he was winning Cy Youngs and striking out like 200 people a year. I just worry with longevity with Yu Darvish. He's a good pitcher, don't get me wrong. But the consistent trait with Yu Darvish since leaving Texas, since he had that injury in Texas and left, has been the 5th and 6th inning. Can he go past those innings? Until he proves that he can consistently pitch into the 6th and 7th inning of the games for the Padres, I'm not taking minus 220 with Yu Darvish. There's no way. Maybe first 5 innings as a side bet I might take for the Padres, but Arizona's got bats, and Ketel Marte is probably the most underrated of them. So if Arizona can get into you in the 5th or 6th inning, I think that the minus 220 is insane and completely overvalued. How many times, Kevin, did we see the Houston Astros? They were like minus 500 against Detroit last year and 2 years ago, and they actually lost some of those games. So baseball, yeah, man, anything above minus 200, I wouldn't consider, even if it's a Dodgers versus a Tigers. It's just too rich for me. I'm with you. Too expensive. Too rich.
I mean, I'd say I have a little bit of faith that you're looking down Dodgers, Rockies, Clayton Kershaw laying 220 against Herman Marquez, who was their best pitcher, but also, Kershaw.
How long is Kershaw going to go in the first game?
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You look down at some of these other games, and St. Louis Cincinnati is very intriguing because both those pitchers, Jack Flaherty and Luis Castillo, both have pitched well against those opponents. Castillo's got good numbers against the Cardinals in his career. Flaherty's got good numbers against the Reds in his career, but they have not faced each other. So you have a 7.5 total there. Runs should be at a premium in that game. Mets, Nationals, a couple Cy Young winners, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, deGrom favorite on the road, and deGrom's biggest problem has always been run support. I mean, you look at his numbers last few years, just tremendous. And with Scherzer, that he, again, still, look, everyone's aging, so we can't say that he's getting older, no one else is. But Max Scherzer has pitched well, but also at times It's like, but he would go 5 innings, strike out 10, and give up 4 runs.
Right.
So he would do that. So Scherzer doesn't really get, racked a lot. He'd get a lot of strikeouts, but he'd throw 100 pitches in 5 innings. So any thoughts on that one? I mean, I maybe lean Mets. I know that's a lot to lay on the road, though. But DeGrom, though, and now you have Lindor in that lineup, and you think this is the season the Mets can finally go over the hump.
I actually like the run total going over with this game because, as you mentioned, Scherzer, he strikes out a lot of people, but he also gives up a lot of runs from time to time. You really are just trying to catch Scherzer on one of his nights where, as you just alluded to, he goes 100 pitches in 6 innings. He strikes out 8 guys but gives up 4 or 5 runs. I think that's something you might likely see in this game. DeGrom, as you mentioned, doesn't really get the run support, however. So I could understand if you were weary on the run total, but my thought process here is Washington probably gives up 5 and New York gives up 2. And you go from there. So I like the run total going over 6.5. 6.5 is low, even for 2 really good pitchers, because you have to understand this is still opening day. It's not like these managers are going to send DeGrom and Scherzer out there for 6 or 7 innings on opening day. They're really just going to go out there, throw 80 pitches each, then go into the bullpen. And from there, I mean, you know how awful Washington's bullpen has been the last 2 years or so. So I think the Mets will win. I think that's a good pick, Kevin. But I like the run total. That, to me, is where my conviction lies in going over the 6.5.
Now, the other New York team earlier in the day, the Yankees, they faced the Blue Jays. And, again, Toronto, who could be making a move this year, and hinge on Ryu, best pitcher on Toronto. We know what Garrett Cole can do. He's elite. I mean, he's not even the ace of the Yankees. He's a top 3 pitcher in baseball. But Toronto, with the bats they have, and Garrett Cole, again, guy can throw 7 innings and not allow a hit or allow very few hits. But I don't love the game, but also wouldn't shock me in the least if Toronto wins that game tomorrow.
No, but I think at the end of the year, Nate Pearson might end up being their best pitcher in Toronto. Ryu gets hurt a lot. That's my only issue with him, is that I don't believe he can give you a full season. And then even if he does, we saw it with the Dodgers, then you have the postseason. And it's a lot on Ryu to be your number 1 guy. I think if Toronto wants to make a move this year, it doesn't have to come from the staff or the manager's point of view, but Nate Pearson, I think, has to take it upon himself to be the best pitcher in that rotation. So it's going to be on the young arm of Nate Pearson, I believe, to dictate the success of this team in the long haul. The bats should be okay. Bo Bichette, very good. Biggio, very good. Vlad, I think his average needs to be sustainable. He can't really be a swing-for-the-fences guy, which I think we saw a little bit of last year. I would like to see Vlad hover around the 290 batting average mark this year for a successful Toronto season. Garrett Cole, though, that's a tough ballpark to pitch in, Yankee Stadium. So just be mindful of the venue there. 7.5 runs is quite doable, I would say, even with the starting pitchers out for both Toronto and New York. I mean, we could probably blindfold hit a home run into right field. It's just so short. It's so close to home plate. So I would definitely just be weary about good pitching in Yankee Stadium this season. It is at a 1 o'clock game, so the ball might be a little bit more difficult for batters to pick up on with the daylight. But I don't really have as much conviction in Ryu as most people do, mainly because of his injuries. And then you add that with the venue that they're playing in. Garrett Cole's a good pitcher, but he will give up runs from time to time. And the bats for Toronto are very good, very young, and with a chip on their shoulder. So I'll take the run total going over for Toronto and New York tomorrow. But Nate Pearson is the guy to watch for Toronto if they want to have a successful season this year.
In one of the late games in the American League, the White Sox and the Angels, and this White Sox team who a lot of people think now with Tony La Russa as the manager that he can get them to win an AL Central championship. They made the playoffs last year. They have plenty of bats in the lineup. Lucas Giolito, one of the top pitchers in the American League last year. Now they're playing the Angels, and Dylan Bundy, who actually had a really good season. And look, he was stuck in Baltimore for a while when the Orioles weren't good, and he pitched well for the Angels a couple times as an underdog. I kind of like the Angels in this spot here in the opener against the White Sox, and again, game 1 of 162. So win or lose, no matter what happens tomorrow, is not going to really mean anything.
The season's over.
Right, but I just think that we may overvalue the White Sox a little bit, and I'm curious to see what the Angels can do. Joe Maddon back as the manager. I've always kind of, I don't say criticize him, but I never think he's as great as people make him out to be. But, I do think the Angels can get this one tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually think the run total might go over here despite the two good pitchers, but I don't think that's the market to consider. I do think the Angels might actually win this game. Look, Chicago's missing a huge bat now in Eloy Jimenez. He's out with a huge injury. He's out for 5 to 6 months. That was their anchor hitter in the lineup. I know Jose Abreu is still healthy. He's also a good anchor hitter, but now Tony La Russa is going to have to adjust the lineup a little bit with one of their better bats out. It's again though, Chicago. We have to see it to believe it with them. Like on paper, all these things look great, but you have to go out there and perform now. So now you're going out there on the road to open a game against a team with a chip on its shoulder as well, against a good manager. You're facing one of the best players in baseball in Mike Trout. You've got a two-way player in Shohei Ohtani who can pitch and hit. And then you got Anthony Rendon, who has won an MVP before with Washington. So the Angels, I would say, are undervalued a little bit more than Chicago is overvalued. But I like the Angels. I'm with you, Kevin. I think that this is good value for them to win this game at home. Obviously if the loser of this game, their season's not over, but I do think it's worth noting that Chicago's missing a really important bat in their lineup, and they're still young, they still have to prove themselves. So I can buy that they're overvalued, but I do think the Angels are much more undervalued this season.
Yeah, and try to ride the Angels as much until the odds makers catch up to them, and maybe the White Sox see how it all plays out. It's going to take some time. This one's interesting in interleague, Minnesota and Milwaukee. Now, Kenta Maeda, who went to the Twins from the Dodgers, where I don't know if he got lost in the shuffle in L.A. because he was pretty good a few years ago, and then he was out of the bullpen, and then he went to Minnesota last year, and he was fantastic. Yeah. And he shut down Milwaukee twice, and now you're getting him basically at a pick him against Brandon Woodruff, who is Milwaukee's best pitcher. I mean, everyone's throwing out their best pitcher on opening day. But Minnesota's got a very good offense still. As long as you're not playing the playoffs, you can back Minnesota in the regular season. Just don't back them in the playoffs because they can't win a playoff game. But Milwaukee, though, Christian Yelich, he struggled a bit last year in that shortened season. There's still a good bullpen for Milwaukee, but I just look at Maeda as a guy that's proved that he could shut down this Milwaukee lineup here, basically getting him out of pick 'em. Yeah,
I like Minnesota. Honestly, I just think they're the better team. They got the better pitching. They've got the better bats. They're just underrated overall. If you were to ask a general sports fan who Jorge Polanco is, I'm not sure they would know, or Eddie Rosario. I mean, these guys are crushers in the lineup. And so Minnesota, to me, is just completely underappreciated for how good they actually are. Maybe you're seeing a pick 'em because it's a road game, but there's really no excuse, I think, in my own personal opinion, that Minnesota should lose this game. Brandon Woodruff is a good pitcher, so he could have a good game. But between the two, I think Kenta Maeda is better, and between the two lineups, I think Minnesota is better. Minnesota doesn't have Christian Yelich, but they have Max Kepler, Jorge Polanco. They have a ton of guys who can hit. Miguel Sano. Yeah, they just got Josh Donaldson, who has won an MVP before. Yeah. So I just like Minnesota's lineup. I think that the Twins have been overlooked for quite some time now. But the thing with Minnesota is they typically miss the playoffs the year after they made it the year prior. They rarely go back-to-back appearances in the postseason as a franchise. So that would be the only thing that worries me. But honestly, in terms of this matchup at 2 o'clock tomorrow, Minnesota, to me, has no excuse to lose this game. They could lose, but they have no excuse. I would take the pick 'em. I'm right there with you, Kevin.
All right, let's take a look at some NBA for let's look back at last night, then look at tonight. We'll talk some more baseball tomorrow.
Summer.
Yeah, so that's fine. We're not gonna forget about it, believe me. But NBA last night, you had 3 of the favorites come through. Yep. Orlando comes back and beats the Clippers. You see that? Crazy. Down 14 at the half, and hey, the Magic, that's now 4-0 against the spread the last 4, and they've blown up the team, and they're still very competitive. And also with the Clippers, they beat Milwaukee the night before, and Paul George was out once again last night. But this is a situation. That's what it is. You got to bet the situation, and they beat Milwaukee. Then you got lowly Orlando coming in, who has no roster. They're just not very good right now. And then the Clippers, guess who's up next for them? The Nuggets at home.
Yeah.
So you have a playoff rematch when the Nuggets knocked out the Clippers last year. And look, you could say at halftime they allowed 37 points. They're blowing them out. But look, Orlando scored 66 in the second half. Like, you got to give them credit for it. So Orlando ends up winning as the only favorite, or the only underdog, rather, last night. Let's look quickly at tonight's action inside of the NBA. The Pacers have beaten the Heat twice this year. Now they'll face off in Indiana. Portland, a chalky favorite against Detroit, and the Pistons have actually been competitive of late.
They've been covering lately. Yeah, especially, at home too. It's weird with Detroit. They got some players there. Sadiq Bey, I think, and Jeremy Grant. They've been very, very good. The spread is worrisome, though, because, Detroit, like you just alluded to, have been competing, and they have been covering quite often at home against good teams. So that's not as much of a lock on paper. Oh, you see Portland versus Detroit. Give me Portland. Just, take your time with that one, because it's not as easy as it appears. Mason Plumlee has been playing out of his mind this year with multiple double-doubles. He's been an assist machine as well. So the Pistons, they're not great. As a matter of fact, someone texted me last night and said, I'll take Gonzaga and the points over the Pistons. And I said, I'm taking the Pistons. They're not as bad as advertised. They are bad, but they're not non-competitive bad. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one for sure.
Yeah, no NBA team. I'm not taking the college team against the NBA team. I don't care how bad they are.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Houston and Brooklyn. Brooklyn's laying 12.5, which I find a little low considering Houston's been terrible and Brooklyn has been good. Actually very good. Boston laying 1 against Dallas. And you wonder if Jaylen Brown is coming back tonight. He missed the New Orleans game a few nights ago. And the Celtics have lost a few in a row at home. Last time they played in Dallas, Luka hit a big shot at the end to beat the Celtics. So a little bit of revenge there for Boston. Utah and Memphis are playing for the third time in like a week. Utah won 2 games at home against Memphis. Now they're going to Memphis. And the Jazz laying 5.5 seems a little short. Knicks and Timberwolves, New York laying 3.5 there, trying to bounce back from their loss to the Heat a few nights ago. Toronto at Oklahoma City, and look, Toronto has rest, so maybe they'll play better tonight, but they've been a complete disaster. Look at that.
Look at their away record.
Remember, what did we talk about yesterday with their coach, with the coach here, Daigneault? 19-27 Oklahoma City. Toronto's 18-29.
Right.
So, and Nick Nurse is the greatest coach ever. So that's not bad. Oklahoma City's got more wins than Toronto.
Yep.
Sacramento and San Antonio wrap up their little 2-game set. Sacramento won the first game a few nights ago, and now it seems like the public's in the dog in this one against the Spurs. Milwaukee and the Lakers. It's just too bad you don't get Giannis and LeBron because LeBron's out, and Milwaukee laying 8.5. But again, the Lakers. They beat the Magic and Cavs the last few games. Not good opposition, but at least they're doing as much as they can without their 2 best players.
Right.
But the Bucks, though, that's a revenge spot for the Bucks, and that's a lot of points to lay. It really is. And then you have Chicago and Phoenix, and the Suns laying 7. They just beat the Hawks last night. Chicago's been a pretty good road dog. They lost the first 2 on this trip to San Antonio and to Golden State when Steph Curry came back. But now you're getting 7 against the Suns.
And we talked about the concern with the Bulls after the trade. We got Nikola Vucevic. Awesome. That's going to make us better. But there's a ripple effect to that, and that's that they had to demote one of their best young talents in Lauri Markkanen, who is now upset. And we don't know how that affects the locker room at all. Also, keep in mind that Zach LaVine he's not hurt, but he's not 100%. So, as we talked about yesterday, Kevin, this is a great game to be mindful of taking Chicago to cover. They usually cover on the road as an underdog. So, the trends that have been going for Chicago seasonally this year tells you they're going to cover the spread in this game against Phoenix. But, as we talked about, that trade for Nikola Vucevic could backfire. Again, on paper, it looks good. You got Vucevic, you got a better player in there. It should make you better. But what effect did it have chemistry-wise in the locker room? And now you've got one of your best young players publicly saying he's unhappy. So it just makes you wonder a little bit. So just be careful about that Chicago-Phoenix game down there. And Phoenix is just terrific. I don't think Phoenix gets enough credit for how good they are this year. They're fantastic.
32 wins for the Suns, and 31 of them that covered the spread, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
The only one that they didn't cover was against Charlotte on Sunday in overtime. And it's funny, Vucevic comes in, the Bulls haven't won yet. Evan Fournier goes to Boston. He's 0 for 10 from the floor in his first game. Aaron Gordon, the Nuggets have won a few games, obviously since he's gone there. I wouldn't say like he's the reason, but what's funny is those guys from the Magic. I mean, they had some decent pieces, but they go elsewhere and they're not doing anything anyway. So that's the story with that.
Steve Clifford.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's not all his fault. Don't stop blaming the coach. So here is what we got for tonight. We have the NBA. You can go to our buy picks page for the NBA, $29.95 for selections, and you can find our handicappers there. Also, the guaranteed picks, buy after it wins, $39.95 for the guarantees, and if it loses, you don't pay anything. Also, we have NHL selections as well. Major League Baseball picks, they'll be up for tomorrow. I'm sure some of the handicappers will have picks later today for tomorrow. Right. But also, want to remind you to click on the subscribe button to join our community here at Vegas Insider on YouTube, and you will see the videos every day. I mean, you see the videos if you don't subscribe, but at least now you'll have more of an opportunity to get these videos, get reminders of when these videos are coming. So that is very important. And also, we are going to have giveaways for you. So we can give you some prizes, whether it's free picks or other things, and we're going to have that as well. So stay tuned for that. But just don't forget to join our community here at Vegas Insider on YouTube. Click on the subscribe button, like these videos, and you're gonna be reminded all the time of Tom and I being in your face.
This industry with sports betting never ends. So there will always be new content, whether it be MLB best bets, Final Four best bets. Shit, we've got the Oscars coming up at the end of the month, so it just doesn't end. And if you want all the content, definitely make sure you subscribe. And like Kevin said, we're going to be doing giveaways for people who interact with us, subscribe, be part of our community. Tell us your best bets in the comment. If there's a bet that we all agree on, we'll reach out to you and possibly give you a free pick or free prizes. So definitely don't want to miss all of that, and be sure the only way to not miss all of that is to just hit the subscribe button. It's that simple.
And also, our Twitter handles are below our names. I'm at VI Rogers. Tom is at _TJKC_. You see it on the screen. And also, Vegas Insider, if you don't know the Twitter handle, that's fine. It's at TwitVI.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, at TwitVI is the Twitter handle for Vegas Insider. So you can always tweet us there, tweet anything you have. You can communicate with us whenever you want. That's why it's there. It's open 24/7. That's the good thing. We're never closed, really. It's always open.
We're not.
So for Thom Cunningham, I'm Kevin Rogers, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. March will be over, and April will start, so we'll turn the calendar, and we'll start baseball season. It's finally here. Thank God for 162 games in 180 days.
Masters are coming up, too.
Masters are coming up, so we got a lot going on. We really do, and unfortunately for Tom, college basketball end this weekend, but
on to the next one.
Exactly. Circle of life in sports. On to the next sport. So for Thom Cunningham, I'm Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching, and best of luck with your bets.